Um, okay, well, just everyone is joining us. I'm DJ, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this with Meghan Daum. Is it Daum or Daum? Did we decide?
I was told I should say down, so
Okay,
I guess we'll do that.
sounds more continental, I guess. Um,
I don't know.
um, so me, I'm just a guy who reads a lot of what I call creative nonfiction, and Megan is someone I stumbled across a few years ago when your book. The Problem with Everything came out, which I enjoyed, and started following you. And you started your podcast shortly thereafter, so I started listening to that. And you also started, or you had for a while, the Special Place in Hell with Sarah Hayter. I really
Right.
enjoyed that. I was sorry to see that go. But you're still going strong with, is it the Unspeakeasy now? Is it officially the Unspeakeasy?
Yeah, I am slowly rebranding. I guess the podcast is for the moment still called The Unspeakable, but I feel like we're not in unspeakable times anymore. It's like a little bit, feels a little bit forced. Like you can't, everything is unspeakable. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
moving into a more unspeakeasy time. So yeah, the Unspeakeasy is the community that I started sort of off of the unspeakable. So my marketing advisors have told me that everything should have the same name. So I guess the podcast is going to slowly be rebranded as the Unspeakeasy. I don't know.
Well, when you think about it, like Zoom meetings are kind of the unspeakeasies of our time, or speakeasies. Like I feel like I do more of these kinds of things now and get more out of them than I do engaging with social media, which is just
Oh yeah, I thought yes. I thought you were going to say than I do interacting with people in real life, which is
no, 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 no. Real
okay.
life would be preferable, but
Okay.
the world being what it is. So, um, what I'm going to do for everyone listening and watching is I've got some questions I've queued up for Megan, but obviously people should feel free to pop some questions into the chat, and we'll take some breaks in order to, give everyone else a chance to ask questions. So I'm hoping this will be a fruitful discussion. Now, if I can just figure out where the chat is, so I have that available.
It is open
Okay.
here. Okay.
And I'm going to try to multitask because people are still joining. And
Oh, nice.
okay, so so your new book is the Catastrophe Hour, um, and you introduce it as a personal foreboding,
Yeah.
um, linked to the time of time disappearing faster than you anticipate, particularly for your generation and mine, Gen X. You say it has a tragically short lifespan culturally. I agree. Um, you also say you feel basically dead in a cultural sense, and say that nothing we grew up with or cared about when we were young even exists anymore. Mostly, there's still kind of 90s music and movies kind of pop up here and there, but I think you're right. Could you just sort of delve into that, what you mean about like cultural extinction, and how that influences your writing and perspective?
Yeah. Well, do I say all those things in one place? I hope they're not.
No, it's
I hope okay. I hope those points are made over the course of a few hundred
mhm.
pages and not one page. Um, yeah, so look, I've been writing about culture and society and myself professionally for 30 years, better part of 30 years. And yeah, there was always, I mean, there's kind of two various ways into this. I mean, for me, the point of being a public thinker, I don't want to use the word public intellectual. That's
Mm,
like, it has no meaning. But the point of being like a writer or somebody who's kind of thinking publicly and right and in the world of ideas was to be surprising and to not please everybody and sometimes be a little controversial and say the things that were true that were not perhaps obviously true or that people didn't want to acknowledge. Like that was the job of the writer. And I started noticing about 10, 12 years ago that that was like suddenly not the job anymore, that the job of the writer was to appease his or her audience, and kind of brand, you to sort of brand yourself in a way that gives your listenership or your readership or whatever what it wants. And
mm,
so, part of I think what has gone away is just this sense of independent creation. Like we call ourselves independent creators now, right? Like that is what we do, but we're still serving like a very particular audience, and there's an incentive system to that. So that's part of what I wrestle with in the book. But I mean, just more specifically, like I guess to answer your question, I, when a young person asks me for advice, for instance, I mean, I don't know if you find this, doesn't happen as much as it used to. I don't even know what to tell them. Like if they say, how do I do what you do? How do I become a writer? How do I get published? How, what kinds of things do I need to do to have this kind of career? Anything I did is of no use. Like the business model that was in place when I started is not there anymore. The incentive structure is not there. The appetite for what I was doing is sort of not there anymore. So I guess that's what I was feeling like. I feel sort of obsolete in terms of like what I'm doing, what I'm engaged with. I mean, I have had to pivot, and I find myself asking for advice from very young people, probably more than they would need to ask me for advice. So that's kind of, I think, the best sort of way into your question.
Terrific. Yeah, and the book is called The Catastrophe Hour, and I'm definitely going to ask some questions about that particular essay. But I noticed when I read it, when I was reading the book, that I felt like the kind of the pivot point of the book was the unbearable halfness of being.
Mm.
You talk about, one foot out the door, feeling in a state of limbo or indecisive. And then you mentioned your friend, you got an astrology reading from a friend who said your sense of home is unsettled.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
said that sounds about right. And so, I mean, am I right to say that that essay is kind of the diagnosis,
Oh,
that's
interesting.
kind of at the center of like both the book and maybe your writing in general?
Oh, that's okay. That's no one's suggested that before. I mean, that piece was on my Substack. I don't know if you remember.
Mhm.
And I think that I said something on a podcast about, being one foot out the door or something. And I think it was a listener or somebody said, "Oh, I totally relate to that." Several people said they related to that idea of just kind of living with one foot out the door. And specifically in that case, I had been living in New York, so I got divorced I got officially divorced in like 2017, but I got separated in 2015, and I moved from Los Angeles, where I'd been living for a long time, back to New York, where I had lived in my 20s. And I thought I was only going to stay for a few years. And so I never like really settled in. And then the years kept going by. And then COVID came and various things. I got waylaid. And so I just kept feeling like it was the unbearable halfness of being like I couldn't commit to being in New York, but like I couldn't go back to LA for some reason. And like I had this Murphy bed, which I actually love, but it just seems so significant. Like, I mean, I still have this apartment, which should tell you something. Like I can't even commit to giving up the apartment. All right. Like I sublet it out. I can't afford to just have it sitting there. But every night I like pull down this bed from the wall and plop it down, and I move my desk, and it's a very comfortable bed, I must say. I really like it. Great mattress. And then every morning I put it up, and it's like, wow, how long are you going to keep living like this? Like you're in your 50s and you're pulling your bed down from the wall every morning. So that kind of felt like something to think about.
Yeah, I just saw the movie Materialists.
Oh, I heard that was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but it was definitely sort of the central dilemma as a girl who can choose either a really rich guy with a fabulous apartment in New York, but she doesn't really love him, or her old boyfriend who's a struggling actor and lives in a shitty apartment with three people. The thing is,
Oh,
he's 37, he's not 25, right? So a certain pattern has been established. And,
right, right,
um,
right.
it's been a while since I've lived in a place like that, but I definitely remember living in places like that, when I was younger.
I mean, yeah, I have the apartment that the Murphy bed is. It's a very nice apartment. It's just very
Yeah.
small, so it's
Mhm.
I don't have roommates there, so at least
Yeah. My sister lived in a tiny place in New York for a few years. So, yeah, that's kind of what you get there.
yeah.
Um, I'm going to skip to, because you mentioned getting divorced just in passing, but you do talk about that in the broken in world.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about sort of post-divorce, you've got scar tissue, it's this kind of magical place, honest living, quote unquote, becomes possible.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that, like the sort of the comfort and honesty that comes from being broken in?
Yeah, so this is a concept that I kind of came up with. This book has a lot of concepts in it, like the halfness of being, or the broken in world, or I mean, I guess the catastrophe hour is also a concept. What was another one somebody had picked out? Oh, I can't remember. It'll come to me. Yeah, so you know, I don't know when if people relate to this, like when you get divorced, it's sort of like you're sort of like embarrassed, or you feel like a failure or whatever. And I had, I noticed pretty quickly that people were, once it sort of got out that I had, you know, broken up with my husband, and I was back living in New York. People were like really reaching out to me, and especially because I was back in New York, so that was one thing, like, oh, let's have dinner, old friends kind of thing. And people I had really only seen like on Facebook for the last many years, and we get a uh, um, we get a distorted view of people's lives there. But something was happening where they would just be extremely honest about their lives, and they would tell me what was really going on, and what was really going on with their marriages or with their kids or with their families, and these lives that I saw the curated versions of. I mean, as far as I could see, they lived in beautiful houses and their kids were amazing and graduating and from, fifth grade and then 10th grade and then Princeton, and everybody seemed great. And, when in fact, like, somebody's kid, a lot of kids had mental health issues, and like there was cheating going on, and depression and addiction, and not in a completely train wreck kind of way. I mean, these were highly functioning people. But it was as if I had entered a new plane of communication. It's sort of like my ostensible failure kind of gave them permission to talk about their own failures and vulnerabilities. And I just found that, yes, it was like the world had gone from, I say, like, it had gone from very like stiff patent leather to a broken in supple leather. And I think that's also a function of just getting older. I mean, I think that's what happens regardless. But I just found that this new way of being in the world and connecting with other people was fascinating and comforting, and really not negative. I mean, I was very sad about getting divorced, of course, but it just felt more human and more real than this kind of like bullshitty keeping up with the Joneses existence that I had observed and participated in previously.
I mean, yeah, having gone through a divorce myself and kind of, you know, dealt with a lot of the same things you're talking about. It's true, your friends at first they're kind of shocked, and then they kind of say, "Well, things haven't been so good around here either."
Right. Right. I know. I was just telling somebody the other day, I don't know, like I feel like the um sort of the moment, I know you're recording this. I'm assuming this is like fairly, you're not going to broadcast this everywhere. Like the sort of the moment that we decided to get divorced was we found out that another couple we knew were getting divorced, and like they seemed less miserable than us. And we were like, wait, what? They're like, they're getting divorced. And it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we have to. Like, it was kind of like that. I mean, obviously, and more had led up to it, and there were other things, but it was like, oh,
Social
okay,
contagion.
yeah,
Um, so I kind of want to circle back then. I mean, so between that and getting back to the unsettling thing, I mean, you obviously you have almost a pathological obsession with real estate. You've lived in a lot of different places, including, was it Nebraska you were in?
yes, I moved to Nebraska when I was 29 for no reason whatsoever. So
And you wrote a book, which I did read, called Life Would Be Perfect If I Lived in That House.
yes,
Um, and later in the book, you talk about, and I believe there's a coda to this, but in the book, you talk about when you bought some property outside LA, and just like what a
Right. In this book, I talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, in this book, I'm
Yes.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
you're talking about
title.
buying
Yes.
property,
Yeah.
and just like there's a quote in it, it's like a new way to feel miserable or something like that.
Yes. Well, it
Yeah.
was a new, yeah. Yeah. So the title essay of the Catastrophe Hour is about buying this piece of land. It's not even outside LA, DJ. It was
Oh,
in LA. In
wow.
LA. Okay, this is how crazy. It was, on a hillside in a residential area, hilly area, about 5 miles from downtown. Um, and I thought this was in 2017, and I thought this was a good idea. Actually, in my defense, if I had gotten this done in the first couple of years, it would have worked. So we don't need to get into the weeds of this, but just really quickly, the real estate market here is insane. When I was married, we had I actually bought my first house when I was 34. I owned a house in Los Angeles that I bought, and then I sold it when I got married, and we had another house, and we sold that house. And so I had an amount of money but there was no good real in my view. Like I couldn't win a bidding war was the issue. Like
Mhm.
it's really hard because you're competing with people with all cash, and especially at my price point, which is the lowest price point, which is still nosebleedingly high. And I love houses. I just love space and design and architecture. And so I always wanted to build a house. So I had an architect friend, and he was like, well, your idea is so simple, we could try this, and we could work on this together. So I took my money and I bought a plot of land, and spent 7 years trying to develop this like very simple house. It was like a barn. It was a barn style house, which was totally original at the time, is now a complete cliche. But yeah, and just between zoning stuff, and a neighbor was fighting me for the first several years, and then COVID, of course, just changed everything in terms of the price of materials and labor and all that. So, I got all the way to, I got everything permitted and did all the hard stuff. And then I had to sell it. I had to give up about a year and a half ago. And it was just so personally devastating to me. It honestly felt like the biggest failure of my life. Like that was the catastrophe hour. And
But that was actually like every day you had the catastrophe hour, right? Didn't you say
yes,
that?
well, the catastrophe hour as a concept, I talk about in the opening pages of the book. Hi, Anna. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, I'm not having you. It's
I
you.
know,
Thank you so
but I
much for
love
being
seeing you. I
here.
know. Sorry, I just didn't want to put you on the spot, but thank
No,
you.
it's your
I'm so excited.
you are on the spot.
I'm so excited to
I'm
be here.
so grateful that you joined DJ
Oh,
Salon. This is wonderful.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So the idea is kind of like every night for me, every late afternoon, as the sun kind of get into this sort of pre-gloaming hour when it gets like the golden light, depending on the time of year, maybe it's 5 o'clock and in the winter, 7 o'clock, whatever. The sun is starting to go down. I just feel this sense of doom, like my life is over or about to end, or I have more time behind me than in front of me. And, so I dubbed this sense of doom the catastrophe hour. So that's sort of the existential concept of the catastrophe hour. And then the actual piece in the book was about trying to build this house and what that represented, and everything. So
One of the things that really just like hit me like a lightning bolt, because not in the same way, but I absolutely relate to it, is you say that you started viewing a house not as a place to live in, but a place to die in. And can you tell us about like when that moment when you thought of what was it, the hospice care worker?
yes. Oh yeah, there was a place. So I was living in New York, of course, all this time, but I would be looking at real estate listings in LA, and I just my father died in 2018, I guess. And my mother died many years earlier. And yeah, at a certain point, I thought about where I was going to live. Like, I got to buy a house. This is going to be, it's not just my next house. This is my last house, like whatever it is. And I became totally obsessed with things like, and I'm on my own, right? Like I don't have kids by choice. I live by myself. And I'm always thinking, not always, but I'm frequently thinking about if I was to drop dead, like nobody would know. Like how long would it take for them to find me? Like my poor dog would starve or eat me or something. And but then I think about, okay, well, when I'm old and dying, or not even old and dying, like I'm gonna have some kind of like nurse's aide or somebody's going to come in, and I'm thinking like, where are they going to park? And like, what are the stairs going to be like when they have to take my body out? Like, are there going to be a lot of stairs? Is it going to be on a hillside? Is it going to be difficult? Like, how is it going to go? And I just start having these
Your
thoughts.
robots, it's going to be flying robots by
I
then.
hope that would be amazing. Like a drone with a crane. Like how would it like pick you up and like take you out? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I was worried with this book that it would be like so dark and depressing, and people would be like, oh my God, this chick is obsessed with death. She's not that old, and she's obsessed with aging, and this is so sad. And what's funny is people have completely related to it. They actually enjoy it, and they're seeing the humor in it, which is there. And I've been just delighted. It's like the broken in world. Really, it's I sort of found the other sort of broken in readership. So I don't know. Do you guys think about like where you're gonna die? I'm like thinking like, what window am I
I mean,
gonna be out of when I die?
I'm in the process right now, and I've been looking at. You would be shocked at the prices; they're so inexpensive because where I'm moving is like incredibly cheap, and and I've been watching the market for the past year. It's just down, 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 and but yeah, that's absolutely the way I'm thinking about it. Like this is the place I'm going to die in. So is it going to have everything I need?
So what do you think you need?
Not much. I don't think as much about someone having to carry me out, I guess. But most of the places I look at are all ranch homes anyway. The main thing I need, it's Oklahoma City. And the reason for there is because my best friend lives there. And so I can like plug into his social network. And he's like very extroverted. He's a college professor. He deals with students every day. He has all the faculty, so it'll be very easy. But what I don't need much. I've always been very minimalist, and I just don't need a lot of stuff. So I don't need a
Yeah.
big place. The only thing I really need is a garage because they get really bad hailstorms there.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it for me.
Okay.
Because you
Interesting.
can buy like a fully rehabbed house, on the smaller side, for like 200 grand. It's shockingly inexpensive. So that's been nice.
So you could buy 5 of them.
Yeah,
5
exactly.
houses.
Yeah, yeah. But that actually, you mentioned how you don't have children, and that's another one of the, not so much, whether you should have kids or not, but being the kind of person who talks about having kids. Tell us about that. Like, because you actually wrote an essay or did a book about that, and
Yes.
sort of became an activist in a way.
Yeah, I sort of got I became a kind of de facto activist. So yeah, so I never wanted kids. I don't think my parents actually wanted kids. Like they were of that generation where there was no choice. I think my father, I mean did fine. They were fine parents, but my father should have had a whole other different kind of life. But anyway, yeah, I was ambivalent at best about it. And it was a factor in my divorce. And after I got divorced, I was so happy to just like be on my own and not have kids. Like I love not having kids. And I did actually, in 2015, I edited a book. It was an anthology of writers writing about the choice not to have kids. It's called Selfish, Shallow, and Self-Absorbed. I can't take credit for the title. I had Hanya Yanagihara, of all people, author of A Little Life, absolutely celebrated novelist, was my partner on that project in the beginning. And then she sold A Little Life, this, hugely award-winning and best-selling novel, and had to leave the project. So anyway, but that was her parting gift to me, was that title. And yeah, I kind of got like into this child-free terms like child free and as if like people who don't have kids are an oppressed minority or should be a protected class or something like this. And I didn't really like that. And I was also, I have to say, I mean, I, like many people, assumed that the world was overpopulated, that we didn't need any more people, we didn't need any more kids, that people who didn't have kids were doing the world a favor. And it's really only been in the last few years that this kind of, this sort of more pro-natalist, different ideas about the population crisis have entered my consciousness. And I can thank Sarah Hayter for that.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that for a second? Because that was kind of one of the things I enjoyed about your podcast with her is, she's got, young kids or young kid. I'm not
She has
sure.
one. She has one
Yeah.
kid, by the way. Yeah,
And
not
clearly takes up a lot of her time, and she clearly likes being a mom. And plus she's what? She's like 20 years younger.
yeah.
So there was sort of a generation gap between you two as well. But I mean, maybe just sort of talk a little bit more about like what that process was like.
Working with her, well, I mean, she's I was a real fan of hers. So Sarah Hayter is she is a public intellectual. I mean, she's kind of a writer. She writes on Substack sometimes. I mean, she kind of came into the public sphere as part of the new atheist movement. She's from Pakistan originally. So she started this organization called Ex-Muslims of North America. So she kind of was known in this kind of new rationalist space, kind of Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, people like that. And then little Sarah Hayter, who was, 22 at the time or something. I really liked the way her mind worked, and we agreed about a lot of things, and we were both sort of similarly unsentimental. And I think in a lot of ways, she's great. I mean, our brains are very similar in some ways, but our lives could not be more different. I mean, she's very traditional. She's been married, she married young. She really thinks that family and having kids is the most important thing in the world. And she does not understand why anybody would want to live like I did. Like at one point, she's like, "Your life is my biggest nightmare." So funny. Like right back at you, sister. So yeah, we had great conversations, and she's sort of in this kind of pro-natalist world, and it's just been interesting to learn about how the population bomb, sort of Paul Ehrlich model, was faulty. I'm not sure it's as faulty as some of these pronatalists say it is, but there's definitely some nuance there.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate that just like everything, it's become politicized.
Yeah.
Like codes one way or another, and
Right.
it's just so annoying. We don't need to get into that, but that does kind of another sort of funny tension between you guys on the show, because a lot of it was just basically, let's read this essay from someone in Brooklyn and make fun of her. Usually a she, but sometimes a he.
Sometimes a they.
Yeah, sometimes a they. But it does kind of cut at the bigger, because a lot of the stuff you did review was like, yeah, I'm not sure I would have published this, or maybe publishing this was as much about kind of gaining status as actually saying something real. But the personal essay, I mean, that's been your bread and butter forever, right?
Yeah.
I actually went back and read, you had a piece, because you had mentioned it on the podcast. I can't remember what it was called, but you had a piece in the New Yorker in the late, it was about the long distance relationship you
Oh,
had.
yes. The New Yorker called that essay Virtual Love, which I hated that title. In my first book, it was called On the Fringes of the Physical World. Yes, very pretentious title. Yes, it was about an email relationship I got into in like 1996 on AOL.
Yeah, and I mean, I was doing that too, around 1996. And so for me, on one hand, it was like a trip down memory lane, both in terms of like the events you describe in the book, but also the fact that you would publish something like that in the New Yorker, and you wouldn't get rage tweeted at, or,
Right.
1,000 comments on your blog post about it. It was just something you would write and put into the world, and that was that. And that has completely changed now.
Yes, and I mean, this gets to your first question, right? Like the obsolescence of it all. And right, so when you have a podcast, I mean, my podcast, The Unspeakable, soon to be The Unspeakeasy, is an interview show, right? So that's just every week I interview somebody. With Sarah, it was a chat show. Part of the reason I wanted to do it with her was because I wanted to do, I wanted a fun podcast. Like I wanted to, have a chance to just have a more casual kind of fun podcast. It ended up being a lot of work because you've got to prepare and you got to decide what you're going to talk about. But, when you have those kind of shows, one of the things you do is like, let's, read what's in the media this week. Like if there's an interesting, some New York Magazine essay to talk about, we'll do it. And Sarah just hated this stuff. Like, writers writing about their marriages or how hard it was to raise their kids or, and stuff that I think had like a kernel of something interesting about it. And constantly she would just despise these pieces. I mean, there was one, and there was actually, I thought it was a beautiful, there was a beautiful piece in the New York Times by this guy, and it had an inflammatory headline. That's another thing that you didn't have back then. I mean, now you have the headline that's like, I have 3 kids and I hate 2 of them. Like that would be your headline, right? And so this guy had written a piece about how he has even though he loves his baby daughter, toddler, whatever, he has moments of regret or something about being a parent, that he had never wanted to be a parent. And then he got married and he fell in love and he did this. And, of course, and it's a very kind of subtle piece with a sort of incendiary headline. And Sarah just thought that this piece should never be written. It doesn't matter how beautiful the prose is, that if it has the message of telling people that they're going to regret having kids, it should just be verboten. Like if we can agree that more people should have kids, therefore we can agree that anything that discourages them from doing so should not be in the world, which is so bizarre because she's like such a free speecher. It's like so strange.
For the child, I mean, this child will grow up and read this. Like Esther always says that, you have to be honest with your spouse. She spoke about this at an Interintellect Salon. But like Esther said that she really dislikes it when a couple comes, into the office and, they would, of course, you want to share openly, but you don't want to tell your wife that sometimes you're thinking about leaving her. Like,
Right.
What the hell is she supposed to do with that information? And Esther Perel's thought, and I'm quoting, and she said this publicly on camera, was, shut the fuck up. Why are you saying that? And it must be so while telling your child that you sometimes hate them. Like, what the fuck is she supposed to do with that information?
Well, that is a good point. That is a question that needs to be addressed when we talk about this kind of writing. But I've also spoken to many writers and they say that there is nothing that kids are less interested in than their parents' old writing. Okay. I do not know a single writer who has adult children or teenage children. Those children have no interest in what their parent wrote, even about them. I mean, and I said this with Sarah, like, first of all, this piece, it's very subtle. He obviously loves the kid. He's talking about a very kind of human, internal moments of internal struggle. That kid will grow up in a family that reads books, that reads essays, that has conversations that are complex, that understands this kind of logic. If on the off chance that child has any interest in reading what her dad wrote in the New York Times 15 years ago, I think she'll get it. Like that. So that to me is like the piece that needs to be acknowledged. And I don't think that Sarah has any, she's just not in the sort of like intellectual space of even considering that, understandably.
It seems almost like the opposite is true. I guess one I can think of, you probably know, Molly John Fast. She's got a book out.
I'm trying to get her on my podcast. I would love to talk with her about that book.
And her mom was Erica Jong, but even she doesn't seem to mind that her mom sometimes wrote about her. It's more that her mom was just crazy.
Right.
And
I mean,
fame.
Yeah.
Or like a better example might be like, wasn't Charles Dickens like really awful to his wife and
Thomas Mann, right?
Don't actually talk
Oh, they
about
all, I mean, all of them.
Yeah. The ones who don't talk about it are the ones who are probably the most suspect. The ones who's like sort of willing to put it on the page, probably has a more, they've grappled with it, I guess you could say. They've spent time thinking about it.
I heard Molly's interview with Terry Gross last week, and I thought it was so great. And she said, and Erica Jong, she's really brutal about her mother. I mean, and Erica Jong is still alive. Apparently, she has dementia. And but Molly said, you know what? There's nothing in this book that my mother wouldn't encourage me to write. Like we are a family that prioritizes writing. And that is kind of the pact. And she said, even if my mother didn't have dementia, I think she would be totally fine with this. And, it's fascinating because I wrote a very brutal piece about my mother after her death. And I really still struggle with it. I mean, it's probably the best thing I ever wrote, which is why I published it. But it's also merciless in some ways and deeply upset many of her friends. And I lose a lot of sleep over this piece. And it remains like something I really struggle with. Like it was worth it on an artistic level, but not on a personal level. So that's the kind of thing I would love to talk with Molly about, because my family was not as sophisticated as her family in terms of this stuff.
But a recent example is is she Canadian, the author who it turned out?
Alice Munro.
Right. Yeah, like this incredible writer who wrote really I haven't read a bunch of her stuff, but I do remember she wrote The Fat Girl, right? Isn't she the one who wrote
Alice Munro? I mean, she's known for her short stories. I mean,
the short story The Fat Girl.
I mean,
I read that 30 years ago, but it stuck with me. It was like a really great piece of writing. But it turned out what is it she did?
Well, she was letting her husband was like molesting her kids. I mean, and just she knew about it apparently, and it's really terrible abuse. And I mean, I do believe in separating the artist from the art. But yeah, I mean, sometimes that's this art monster concept, right? I mean, sometimes you just put it out there.
So just as a follow-up, I mentioned about sort of like writing for magazine versus the online world now. I mean, I think it was last week, one of your pieces was in the Free Press.
Yeah, that was an excerpt from the book. That was
And
from
the
title piece.
I'm not a paying subscriber, but I know that they have a very lively comment section. Did you even look at the comment section or no?
No, I'm not going to look at the Free Press comments. I mean, the thing is, it's, I didn't actually, I wasn't, they came to me and asked if I wanted to excerpt the piece in there. And when you have a book out, the idea you want to have like a section of it appear somewhere. I mean, in the past, I was often in the New Yorker in my previous life. And in this case, I mean, most of the pieces, there's 3 brand new pieces in the book. The last 3 are brand new, were never even on the Substack, like never read by anybody, including the title piece, The Catastrophe Hour. But so there wasn't actually that much. So a publication was not going to run something that had been on my Substack, for instance, or somewhere else. So there wasn't that much to choose from if they wanted to run something. So I was a little bit, my first thought when they came to me was like, nah, I don't think there's anything for you. I honestly don't. Like, I don't see any of these pieces being in the Free Press. It just doesn't seem like the right fit. And they're like, no, we can figure it out, or, whatever, it'll be good publicity. So I let them, and it was kind of a cobbled together version of the piece. I mean, it's like a 7,000 word essay or something. And they had to knock it down to 1,700 words or 2,000 words or something. But no, the Free Press readers are not the audience for this kind of essay. So I don't need to hear what they say. And, I don't even look at my Amazon pages anymore. I have not read an Amazon customer review since my second book.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. Well, I mean, you sort of touch on this in, maybe it's in, I can't remember which essay, but you just sort of talk about, you sort of joke, but not quite joking about the TikToker who's making a crying video in the parking lot, and this is probably, I guess, the ultimate of like what Sarah is against. Like that's the logical endpoint, you know,
Right.
from
Well,
writing,
I'm against that as well. Yes.
yeah, from writing a long essay to just like going viral on TikTok, you know.
Right. Right.
But do you think that that has like degraded in general the personal story? I mean, it's just become almost
Yeah.
a parody at this point.
Yes. And I also think bad personal essays have degraded it. I mean,
Hmm.
they're not edited anymore. The standards were lower. The barriers to entry for publishing anything became less, which is good
Hmm.
in some respects. It was hard to get published before. Um, but it's cheap to publish opinion pieces and essays. If you are an editor or a publisher of a periodical, a news outlet, whatever, it's much cheaper to have somebody just write 1,500 words about themselves or their opinion than it is to send somebody on a reporting trip to Afghanistan or wherever. Like, reporting is expensive. Opinions are cheap
Yeah.
and personal stories are cheap. So we just had, again, it was the business model. We were just saturated with personal essays, and there was less editing and more inflammatory headlines. I mean, Sarah Hepola speaks beautifully about this. She's been on my podcast a number of times talking about this, and she sort of, when they changed the headlines so that the headline was like not a sort of artistic, the title of the piece, it wasn't a title of the piece, it was a headline for an online thing. Like, it was just literally like, you know, like exactly, like, I hate my kids and here's why. Like that, like that would be the title. And I think that did a lot of damage, because
Well, I
you
mean,
had the same piece. Yeah.
I saw this even yesterday. Like I follow like the I don't know if you do, but on Twitter or in the kind of the Substackosphere in politics, there's talk about the abundance, that book Abundance.
Yeah. Ezra
And
Klein and yeah, Derek Thompson.
it started this like food fight between kind of the left, you know, the sort of the socialist left and the kind of moderate center. And Ezra Klein's wife, Annie Potts, had published something in the Atlantic. And, you know, again, she doesn't choose the headlines, right? She just
Right.
writes the article.
Yes.
And
Yes.
someone quote tweeted just a screenshot of the headline. I can't remember what it was, but it was something like, you don't need democracy, or inflation is your fault, or something like that, you know. And this, you know, leftist, this, you know, identitarian, I stand with women kind of leftist said, the only thing you need to know about this piece is that it was written by Ezra Klein's wife. You know, it was like the most sexist thing. Like the only thing that matters, and Annie Potts is a great writer. She's written books too.
Right.
I mean, she does really good analysis, and it was just so gross.
Because Ezra Klein is not leftist enough now.
Yeah,
He's not
yeah,
left enough for the left. Yeah.
yeah. It's a factional fight that's going on, and
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
all
all you need to know about this piece is X. Like, there's never that sentence never ended in any kind of useful way. So
yeah, exactly. Um, but that's actually uh kind of a good segue, because in the problem with everything, you talk about being problematized, and you mentioned this in one of your essays too.
oh,
Can you
I
tell?
talk about it in the new book. No, there's a new, in the Catastrophe Hour, there's a piece
Yes.
called
Oh,
Problematized.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So you were, because of that book, in a
Yeah.
sense, you were problematized, and that kind of changed the way people relate to you and maybe affected your career. It's impossible to know, but tell us more about that. And it's, and just to
Well,
be clear, I mean, I'll stick up for Meghan. Meghan talks about difficult topics, but I mean, you talked about branding. Like you would probably make 10 times the money if you were just like became a right-wing culture warrior, right?
oh,
Because
totally.
you could
Or
take your
left wing.
opinions,
Yeah.
you could copy your essay into ChatGPT and said, make this as right-wing as possible, and it would just be red meat, you know, but it's not. And
Yeah.
so you should not be problematized. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I'm not canceled. So the
Yeah.
problematized idea is sort of like what happens if you're not canceled, but you're sort of perhaps non grata in certain spaces. So right. I mean, I don't know if people hear, like, I as you know, like I started writing about culture war stuff directly probably 10 years ago. I mean, by the way, I've always covered this stuff. There's nothing that I have said in the last 10 years that I wasn't saying for the last 30 years. It's just that like the framing became totally different. It just, I honestly did not change. But I wrote a whole book about the culture wars, and I didn't, I was critical of aspects of Me Too, for instance. And, I started yelling at the left 10 years ago because they were ceding all of their power to the right. Like they were playing right into the hands of the right wing. I mean, it was making me insane. I didn't like what feminists were like handing it to the misogynists by the way they were acting. I was so frustrated. And a lot of people were tone deaf and either were unable or unwilling to understand what I was saying. I feel like they were unwilling because these are not stupid people. They shouldn't have been unable. And I never, then I sort of like found myself in social circles of people who consider themselves canceled. And maybe some of them were, and some of them were just sort of like more disliked than they used to be, for instance. And, one thing I noticed at a certain point was that there was almost like a cachet in being canceled. I noticed like a lot of people run around going like, I'm so canceled, I'm so canceled. And it's like, no, you've had some people being mean to you on Twitter. Like that's not being canceled. And, I definitely don't have professional opportunities that I used to have, and I've taken professional hit, and there's all kinds of consequences for what I've just decided to do over the last 10 years, but it is not cancellation. I mean, I write for the New York Times. I walk the earth. I pay my bills. I mean, there's just, you cannot say that I am canceled. But I do think that I'm problematized, and there's definitely, I know that there's things I don't get, there's stuff I don't get invited to because of the optics or because there's a perception that I'm saying stuff that that I shouldn't be saying, which is actually just not true. They usually have no idea what I'm saying.
Yeah, it gets back to the way like you can raise your own status by attacking someone else online, and
Right. Yeah.
it is just gross. So here's a shift. You talk about you have an essay called "A Handsome Woman," and you talk about your self perception. And it's funny because you mentioned your publicity photo, so I actually went back and looked, like tried to find some of your older photos. One of them, you weren't wearing makeup, you mentioned.
Oh, I never wore makeup at all. And so, I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't wear makeup. I mean, I did not, I honestly like, I don't think I bought like any makeup until I was like 32.
Well, suffice it to say, you don't wear it well. You wear it well in the sense that you don't need to wear it.
Uh-huh.
But but you mentioned how like I mean, now you do so much on video now, probably more in the last couple of years than you did in your entire life previously. Um, and how do you think that's kind of affected the way I don't want to say how you perceive yourself. I mean, do you think it affects the way you move through the world at all? Or are you the same kind of person you always were?
The video thing is really tough. I mean, and I love audio. Like I love
Me
radio.
too.
I always loved radio. All I ever wanted was my own radio show, Um, when we had to switch over to video. I mean, Sarah and I started it. We started on audio, and then just became clear that you could not grow your audience unless you were on video for some reason. I don't get it because most people still listen on audio, but it's like they want to know that the video is available somewhere or something. I still don't
Well,
quite
it's
get it.
my understanding, and you, I guess, know more than me. But my understanding is being podcasts aren't viral. It's not like YouTube, right, where you see suggested videos. And I have
Mhm.
heard, it's been a while since I heard this, but I've heard that there's a lot of people who will just watch YouTube, but actually it's just in another tab. They're not actually watching it, they're
Oh,
listening.
okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But even, I
And
mean,
you mentioned in that essay, you sort of mentioned how like if you turn your head a certain way, you don't like the
oh,
way you look, and
horrifying, horrifying. I'm embarrassed to even talk about this now. So yeah, I mean, I never, there's, yeah. So, I mean, look, I'm in my 50s. So, and I was doing a podcast with, of someone who was 20 years younger, and her audience, she had a very different audience than I had, and a lot of men. Her audience was very male. So no, I mean, I have to look at there's like things that I cannot stand about my face that I would have no idea about if I was not on video. Like, would not cross my mind.
Well, one thing I do with Zoom is I disable self-view. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you can't do that
Yeah.
with Google, but you can just like, basically you don't see yourself. And,
Right. But then if you go out of the frame, you don't know. You can't really do
Yeah.
that if you're recording for the thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I don't, again, this is a whole other conversation. I don't know if people are that interested, but I do think that this like podcaster space, YouTuber space is it's part of the reason it's so male dominated is because men can just look like crap. I think the worse they look, the more their audience likes it.
Right.
So you have like very young, hot women, and then a lot of guys of all ages. And there just aren't very many middle-aged women on YouTube. And that's no accident.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of hearing an interview years ago with Joan Rivers. It was Terry Gross interviewing her, and she was asking, because Joan Rivers was very like upfront about her plastic surgery. I mean, that was part of her act, was to make jokes about it. And Terry Gross asked her something like, have you ever thought like maybe that's bad, that like maybe you shouldn't be so focused on your looks or something? And she's like, I'm in Hollywood. I can't imagine not thinking that. I mean, it's not even a question,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, at least she would. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, people do I always say, people are like, I don't know anybody who's had work done. It's like, yes, you do. You know everybody. You just don't realize it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's so true. Okay. We're coming down the home stretch, and then we'll open up for questions. So, femcel cope. You say you identify as childless and alone, but you're also in the right life, and you don't regret it. But you talk about just the word cope. It's everywhere, and it becomes the default setting. When did you sort of notice that, and like, when did it become the default, I guess, for you?
Well, the cope concept I learned from Sarah. So again, like that's cope. That's cope, like as a noun, even like cope as a noun. Yeah, I don't like the title femcel cope. I wish I could go back and give this another title. I don't know. It had several titles, and I ended up just going with that, but I regret that. Well, yeah, I mean, so I was interested that this is kind of a concept piece because I get a lot of like manosphere content on Twitter, and I engage with a lot of it and a lot of pronatalist content, and like I see like a lot of stuff about the empty egg carton meme and like women hitting the wall when they're 22, and like I find this discourse like totally fascinating. That women have no value, like, but because there is a huge reaction to this kind of post-sexual revolution, kind of anti-biological determinism way of being in the world. I mean, I think there's like, again, like there's a kernel of truth to this. Like we have gone really off the rails as a civilization in terms of like being in tune with our biology and what we're here to do. Like I do not live a natural life. Like I am an outlier. I am not a normal person. Like that I am in the right life, but it's not the right life for most people. But I was really, this idea that, it would be better if you settled down when you were, hook up with somebody when you're like 20 and then start a family early, and that this is a better way to go. I think that that's a conversation that's really, really valuable, because I do think that there was this idea for a long time that you were like a loser if you settled down too early, like depending on your kind of socioeconomic class and like where you live in the country, obviously. But for me, I definitely felt that. But what I wanted to do is like take all these memes from this kind of manosphere, the trad wife kind of thing, and wrap my own kind of personal dating history and relationship history around it, which was a big risk for me because I hate that, and I hate writing about my like romantic life. I don't do it anymore, like unless it's like has to be like really worth it. And the point was that like when I was 20, I thought I was an entirely different kind of person than I turned out to be. Like when I was 20, I really wanted a boyfriend, and like I wanted to like, you know, settle down with somebody and live in a brownstone in Manhattan and like have a kind of certain kind of like I really thought that of my, and I wanted to have kids, and like I thought that about myself pretty solidly until I was about 25. And then I completely changed. And so I'm just interested in the idea, like if I had actually just married the guy I was dating when I was 22, who did want that, and I outgrew him, and I was 25, I broke up with him. Would I, if I had settled down with him, would I not know any different? If I had married him when I was 23, maybe my whole life would be different. I would never become the kind of person that I am, a certain kind of person. So anyway, it's a kind of sliding doors kind of piece. And people seem to be liking it. I did not know how it would land, but yeah.
Sliding Doors, another great 90s movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the last question. So, the catastrophe hour is all about the essay, the catastrophe hours, like you told us earlier about, buying this piece of property and, just going through hell, basically.
I mean, it was hell
but
in my
getting-
own way. It was a hell. It was a different kind of hell than in my career. I enjoyed it actually.
It was good material.
Yeah.
But one thing I highlighted, because I know what's happened since, you say that, the only thing that would cool the housing market in LA is a catastrophe, an earthquake, a terrorist attack, or fires that rolled down from the canyons. Well, that actually happened.
Yeah.
And it affected you directly. So tell us about that.
I know. So that piece is so crazy to read, because I also talk about like my tortured relationship to my stuff and my possessions and everything that's in my house, and imagining that I'm going to die and people are going to have to go through my stuff. So yeah, when in January, I was renting a house in Altadena here, and it burned down. It burned down in the wildfires on January 8th. And the book was already done. The book, the title, everything. And it was not in a burn area. It was in a pretty residential suburban area. Nobody thought, I mean, I left, I took like a sandwich with me. I saw that there was a fire a couple miles away. I mean, whatever, we don't have to get into that, but it was shocking. Never, ever thought that would happen. And yeah.
Did it affect the real estate market?
No, of course not. No, everything went up. It all just goes up, up, up. Yeah. No, it didn't. In fact, well, I don't know. I mean, for a while, everybody, all the rich people in the Palisades, the Altadena was like the poor part, the poor fire. The Palisades, a lot of those people just, immediately went and bought another house, kind of thing,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was, I mean, unfortunately, something like that's never happened to me, but it was such a, I mean, just an on the nose kind of.
Yes, I know.
Coda to the book.
Yeah.
I hope you could at least, maybe they'll let you write an essay about that as a.
I mean, I've written a number of essays about, I mean, that was the thing, is then it became, I wrote an essay for the Free Press actually about the fire, and I've had a couple, the fire has been an interesting writing opportunity, and it's been nice to not have anything to do with the culture wars. I mean, I'm sure they'll find a way, but it's been nice to step away from that.
Well, that's all of my questions. I want to open it up for people who have questions. I do want to make sure Thomas Arnold posted earlier when we were talking about, your kids. What if your kid reads your essay? And he says, my kids never once shown any interest in this book.
Yeah.
That I have a chat group in. So
yeah.
There's a link there if anyone wants to check it out. It sounds like a pretty racy book too. It's about robot sex. So
yeah, kids are definitely don't want to read about your
stuff. I mean, I've heard Conan O'Brien talks about how his kids have, Conan O'Brien just won the Mark Twain Award. He's one of the funniest people of our generation. And he's like, they just do not care, at all about my humor. At best, they might be impressed if he met a celebrity of some sort, but
yeah,
it's just funny.
No, they don't. Yeah.
So we still have some time left. Does anyone here have any questions for Meghan? Or Meghan, do you have anything burning on your mind? Yeah, go right ahead.
Thomas.
Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. This has been great conversation. And my question is, what writers would you say in the last few years have been ones that you've leaned on, say maybe in ways that you haven't over the past few decades? Have there been any particular ones that you would, whether for this book or just dealing, like you said, navigating your position as a writer relative to the culture wars, not wanting to be absorbed by that, but not wanting to be completely disconnected? Are there any, right? I mean, Leslie Jameson always talks about kind of like the Joan Didion problem and just, being kind of forced into these these casts of the skeptic or this or that. And I just wondered, it seems like there would be kind of iconoclasts, but not the iconoclasts that you're going to get in your YouTube feed, in terms of just off the path. And I was just curious if there were any that come to mind for you as being ones that are really holding your interest recently.
Gosh, I mean, Tim Kreider is somebody I've had on the podcast a couple of times, or maybe just once actually. He's just such a beautiful, beautiful writer, and so he's an essayist. I mean, it's Kreider, if you've never heard of him. He has a couple of books. One's called We Learn Nothing, another's called I Wrote This Book Because I Love You. He was writing a lot for the opinion. He would do like opinion pieces in the Sunday Times every so often, and they would all go viral. I mean, they would just be, he has this incredible piece that I've taught many times about people talking about you behind your back. And, just the fact that we have to go through life knowing that people are talking about us behind our backs, in the same way we know, like, we have an idea of what we look like, but then somebody takes a picture of you at a party and you're like, your head is turned a weird way and your mouth is like, you're just like horrible. It's like, oh my God, that's actually what I look like to most of the world. And like, you have to just live with this mortifying knowledge. And he calls this the mortifying ordeal of being known. And it's just such a beautiful phrase. And so his work, I often turn to. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. I have to read for the podcast all the time. I'm constantly like reading the books of my guests, and trying to think if there's been like what has felt particularly inspiring. I mean, I don't know. I always go back to like the Philip Roth novels and just that kind of exuberance. You can just go back and reread The Human Stain every year or so. It just kind of puts it all in perspective. It's like, yeah, this bullshit has been going on for so long, and you can it doesn't need to affect you. He just has such a handle on it. It's like he's telling this story with such authority and just not detachment, but he's not all caught up in it. Like, he's owning it. He's telling the story on his own terms. And I find that helpful. Anyway,
I'll throw out just a writer that I've really liked recently is Alan First. He writes spy novels.
Yeah.
They're set during World War II, so before the CIA, and they're not. He has like 12 of them in a series, but they're all independent. You can read them. You don't have to read them in order. And the focus is not on like, here is what the OSS is up to. It's more like, here's this police lieutenant in Greece who helps, through kind of intermediaries, and he helps Jews get out of Germany, just kind of one or two here, one or two there. And he's a fantastic writer. He's such a good writer, but it just transports you to another time. Like you said, it's not cultural war at all. It's like real war,
Right.
And just really wonderful characters. But anyway, Robbie, why don't you ask your question?
Yeah, thanks for this discussion. It's really interesting so far. My question was about the I was wondering if you can compare and contrast the maybe the personal essay genre, the memoir genre, and the contemporary influencer space around the because I think they both have an interest in developing this kind of like self-exposure, self-disclosure, even authenticity, but it seems to operate in a very different register. So I was wondering if you see commonalities or contrasts between them, or even ways that people are like blending the two together.
Well, that's a good question. I'd be curious your thoughts on that because I mean, I guess you could make the argument that these kind of TikTok shorts crying in your car kind of thing is the new personal essay. I mean, I've often made a distinction between memoir and personal essay. It's fairly arbitrary, but it's my distinction, which is that, like a like an essay is really about an idea. Like you're using your personal experience and your story as a lens through which to like look at a bigger thing. I'm actually not a natural storyteller. If I was, I would be a lot richer because I would be in Hollywood and I would be writing screenplays. I have never managed to figure that out because I am not a storyteller. I'm an ideas person. So I love personal essays because I can like think about a concept, like the broken in world, that's a concept. And then it's sort of like, how do I find my way into like discussing this concept and offering it to the reader? So for me, like the goal really is to like invite your reader to think alongside you as you sort through your ideas. Like it's an act of generosity. I mean, a memoir, these are sort of semantic issues, right? I mean, a memoir really is like it's a story about something that happened to you. A lot of people who write a memoir, that's going to be their only book. Like they're not necessarily a writer. Like they have something happen to them and it's enough to like sustain a book and they write it and it's out there, but they're not necessarily going to be somebody who's going to write a personal essay. Like that's a little bit different. A personal essay is something that a writer writes. I mean, obviously there's exceptions, but it's a literary, it's a sort of a literary gesture. Not that a memoir is not. But I always think that if you're going to write about yourself, it's got to transcend the personal and talk about something larger. Otherwise, it's just self-indulgent and it's actually an imposition. I mean, Emily Fox Gordon, the writer, always, she made this distinction between confiding and confessing. So you always want to confide. That when you're confiding with your reader, you're offering them something that you've already thought about. It's intimacy. I mean, you want your reader to feel like they're sitting across from you, like at a bar table, and like, let me tell you about what happened, about how it happened. If you're confessing, you're just like vomiting it all down. You're asking the reader to sort of process it. It's very ungenerous. It's really like I think it's an imposition. So that's kind of the distinction that I make. I mean, in terms of like, the short videos, I don't know. I mean, some of them are funny. I mean, if it's like a comedian, I always said the comedians I thought were personal essays. Like really great stand-up comedy it's a form of essay writing. But I don't know. What do you think, Ravi?
Yeah, I think there's this emerging kind of consensus that like authenticity and content is like a big part of what drives people. And at the same time, there's this like drive towards, like you're saying, this thing about like giving the audience what they want to hear. So I think there's like this interesting balance between the two things. But like when people do tell stories, there is this like drive to like get to some sort of like disclosure or like some sort of like thing that's unearthed in the same way that like I think memoir or personal essay and thanks for the distinction get to. But I think the main difference is like literary craft, like you're saying. These are not the videos are not done by people that have like um yeah, like high level literary writing skills. So that's the main difference that I see. Um yeah, I guess that's what the difference that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, my I always maintain that at the end of the piece, like the reader should know maybe everything about the narrator, but not necessarily anything about the author. I mean, that's very different. I mean, the reason I write personal stuff, actually, ironically, is because I'm very private. person. Like you're controlling it. Like I'm putting it out there. You know, I think I said this in The Unspeakable, my book, you know, that for everything in here that feels like a detail that is extremely personal detail, there's 500 details I've chosen not to include. So that's the thing. I mean, DJ, it's funny, you ran the you ran it through and found what kind of like personality type I am. Is that what
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it was great, but I also want to be like don't believe everything you read, you know, like that what's in the book, that is like the book that I presented. It's not me as a person. And obviously like the average person who doesn't know me would not know that, but it's I see it as just a very different it's a separate entity from me.
Yeah, I don't write essays myself, but I write poetry, and it's the same kind of thing where like some of the things that I write about are like they seem like very personal stories, but it's like very consciously done to present a certain effect with the poetry, and it's kind of misleading if you take it at face value. But I think part of the current cultural economy is that people are going to take it at face value and assume that you're talking about yourself.
Yeah, it's a very literal world
So,
that we're
so
in.
actually on that, I have actually have a question for you, Meg. Did you ever watch the show Girls, Lena Dunham?
Girls,
Yes.
yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
Me too. And I remember watching it and thinking, this is like the new Woody Allen. I mean, I thought she
Oh,
was,
she is Woody Allen. I profiled her for the New York Times. It's one of the things I'm proudest of. There's a cover story in the New York Times in 2014, I think.
yeah.
I profiled Lena. I spent several days with her. And thank you, Thomas. Delphine Rue is on Blue Sky. That's funny. Sorry. um, uh, I think Lena Dunham is brilliant. And
Yeah. And the thing is,
Woody Allen is the obvious comparison. I mean, she's an auteur.
yeah, but she went through this phase. I hope she's gotten past it where she kind of had to apologize for her
Yeah,
work. She
I don't know what she's doing now. No, she got, yeah, I mean, the thing is that show, when was it on? When did it start? 2012 or something like
something like that.
that
Yeah.
was right at the tail end where people could metabolize this kind of content. Like they
Mhm.
could see it. They could see she's obviously making fun of like these are not supposed to be likable characters, okay?
Right. Yeah.
No. And you know, yes, they're all white because that's what they would be. Like
Yeah.
you know what show is driving me crazy? Have you seen Your Friends and Neighbors?
I have not. No.
Okay, do you know this? John Hamm is in it. It's on Apple TV.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard very mixed reviews of it. Yeah.
It's people, I mean, like it's like about these rich people and they, you know, country club and everything. And they've like made them sort of diverse. And it's like, come on, like, I'm sorry. This person would not be your friend. Like you're like, this is not what this world is. And it's just like all these, it's like this, it's punctuated with this kind of like weird inclusivity that just feels like it completely undermines any like sophistication of this show. Anyway, whatever. No,
Another one I liked
Girls was
was
amazing.
Insecure with Issa Rae. I thought was fantastic too. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Mhm.
I tell people it's like a black Sex in the City.
Okay. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I
She's
saw a few of them, but yeah, I don't know what happened with Lena. Like I mean, I know with her when I profiled her, you know, her sibling, her now her, you know,
oh yeah.
well, dead name Grace, who is now Silas, I think, was in the piece and has since transitioned, and I think that affected her outlook a lot. And yeah,
Did I have one more question? But if I want to give others a chance, so Trey or Alice, do either of you guys have questions?
they don't have. They're hiding.
You're
Okay.
hiding. All right. Well, so you mentioned obviously for the podcast you have to read a bunch of stuff. So maybe it's become, I mean, that's your work in a way, but like I've been making a real effort to read more books. And so two things. One is reading your book. I thought about like, um, there were so many places in there where you could have had a hyperlink, you know, and it was so nice not to have a hyperlink, you know, like
Right.
not to. feel like, oh, I need to click this and open a tab, you know.
Yeah.
But more generally, Thomas Chatterton Williams, he wrote I saw him tweet a few weeks back, something like, you know, reading is now like exercise. Like you have to set aside time, you know, like I'm going to the gym, I'm going to go read. I mean, do you feel like that's true with you too,
Oh yeah. I mean, I read on planes. That's
Mhm.
really, I try not to use the Wi-Fi at all when I get on a plane unless I really have to. Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm not a, you know, it's funny. This book is not on audio. It's a British publisher, and they are like not into audiobooks over there. And I
Hmm.
have had so many people in the US be like, "Where's the audiobook? What's wrong? I'm so mad. I can't, how am I supposed to read this? It's on an audio." Like angry. And I said to the publisher, like, we're going to get the audiobook going. Like, there are people, and they're like, the editor's like, what is it? They can just read it. They can just read it. What's the problem? And it's, I mean, I think, yeah, people like to multitask and they like to exercise while they're consuming a book. And, or they read it at like on 2x or something. Like they'll listen on twice the speed. Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't read as much as I should. I have a lot of, I mean, I'm really gonna make myself read more novels.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to make a really conscious effort, but now I'm starting to get to the groove, but it's still a challenge. There's just so many
I get too excited. Like I can't really read a book before bed if it's a good book because I just like it makes me like want to write and it makes me get, so I can't
Oh, yeah.
actually read before bed.
Oh, that's pretty much always when I read. That's funny.
Yeah, I know. But then I don't want to read during the day because that feels lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any final thoughts? Does anyone have any other questions, or we can call it?
No, Trey, you just want to tell Robin McDuff you were here. Oh, okay. That's very, say hi to Robin.
Here, why don't you pitch you've got an Unspeakeasy coming up?
Oh yes, yeah. So the Unspeakeasy is the community I started around the Unspeakable podcast. It's mostly we do retreats, free speech vacations, and we have an online community. It's mostly for women. However, we have done some co-ed retreats, and we are doing a big one in New York in October. Normally, we only have a few speakers. We have multiple speakers at this one. So this is going to be a weekend, October 11th and 12th, all day, both days. And we're going to have panels of speakers, people like John McWhorter, Mike Pesca, Peter Moskos, Carol Hooven, the evolutionary biologist, Lisa Selin Davis, Ben Appel, Alana Newhouse, who's the editor of Tablet. And we're adding speakers all the time. So basically, it's going to be like a little mini ideas festival. And we're going to have, you know, panel discussions, and then, you know, maybe I'll interview somebody or Mike Pesca will interview Peter Moskos or something like that. And then it's very quickly going to open up into like a group discussion, not just an audience Q&A, like a real discussion. And you know, it's going to be, it's not going to be a whole lot of, you know, it's not going to be a whole lot of attendees. I mean, you know, a decent number, but it's not like 100 people or anything. So it's a chance to spend the weekend with your intellectual heroes, and all off the record. We do no social media, nothing is recorded for outside purposes. It's just nuanced discussions about a variety of subjects. So I'm super excited, and it's going to be, yeah, October 11th and 12th, all day, both days. We'll serve you lunch. It'll be beautiful space. And you should come, DJ.
I'd like to. I'm broke. I'm unemployed.
I know we should have we need to.
That's
I
how I
know.
can do this on a Tuesday afternoon, you know, instead of having a real job. But
I know.
it's definitely right up my alley. I'd be worried about talking too much. I would be like grabbing people and.
Oh no, you know what? It's funny. We had our first co-ed retreat last summer in Chicago, and I had to make the men talk more.
Really?
Yes, they were so afraid of mansplaining, I think, that they were so reserved. And I was like, guys, like talk more, because women really talk a lot.
That's true.
That's what really hit home. Like when we have our all women's retreats, it is like intense talking.
I wonder if that's maybe it's an in real life thing, because I'm in a Zoom group with some people that we get together twice a month to talk about stuff. And there's two women who I love. They're great and they're regular contributors, but I would say it's dominated by the men a lot of the times, the talking. And I wonder if it's just because it's on Zoom as opposed to in real life, you know?
I mean, that's why I started the Unspeakeasy, because all of these podcast communities like Persuasion and, you know, very Fifth Column, various things, they were very male dominated, and women were experiencing cancellations, cancel culture and stuff in a very particular way, whatever, we don't have to get off on that. But that's why I started it. But yeah, it's funny that when we do mix it up, especially at least in the Unspeakeasy, the guys are pretty, I think maybe because they're aware that they're coming into a women's space or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I've
the
got to check.
co-ed retreat, it's going to be totally, we already have I think of our signups are probably pretty equal, pretty 50-50 men split, men, women at this point. So
All right, well, I'll try to find a way to
yeah,
get
the unspeakeasy.com/retreats, or you can go to my website. Oh yeah, meghandaum.com/retreat. Exactly. We're having some website identity issues, by the way. So you can find me somewhere. Okay.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us, Megan. This was fun. It was really great to kind of hear how you think about these topics and just kind of writing in general. And
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you, Anna. I don't think she's still here, but I've always been very curious about Interintellect, and now I know.
yeah, Anna's great. She would have no problem speaking up at a retreat.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming.
All right.
Uh,
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Thanks, DJ.
Bye-bye.
Bye.